Good morning, everybody from the West Coast, and I guess almost noontime on the East Coast with Joy Reid. Thrilled to be here. I apologize up front for the scratchiness of my voice. I am fighting off a cold, and I hope it'll be back to normal soon. But it's great to see you, Joy.
It is great to see you, Steve. Always great to see you.
How's everything going?
So far, so good, other than the fall of the Republic.
I don't know if you remember this from the trauma of election night in 2016, but we were on set together in
Yeah.
MSNBC. You had at one point, you had Carville there, you had Mike Murphy there, you had me there, and we're like the equivalent of baseball guys if you do this, right? And so we're watching the numbers come in, and a couple minutes into the returns, this is not going good. And I'll always remember spending time with you in the green room
Mhm.
after it was clear this guy had been elected president of the United States. It was just the two of us. And here we are 10 years later, and the White House is bulldozed.
Yeah, and you know what? And remember, before people were being brought out on set, we were in the green room. This was the Morning Joe green room.
Yep.
And for a while in that room were you, me, Nicole Wallace, who
Mm-hmm.
was also on her phone. Michael Steele was in there for a
Mm-hmm.
while before he was brought on to set. And there were several other people, including, I'm going to forget the gentleman's name, who had been on the Bush v. Gore legal team. Well,
Ben
I
Ginsburg.
that is exact right. He's
Yep.
standing there, and even he and so I am there with a lot of people who are Republicans who are and we all had and I was a lifelong Democrat, and we all had the exact same look on our faces, regardless of our conservative or liberal idea. It didn't matter. We all saw and felt the same exact thing. It was one of those moments of pure bipartisanship where we were all like, oh my God, we're in trouble. Because if you knew anything about Donald Trump, you understood what the American voter had bought. You understood what they were bringing on board into our White House. This is not what you and I mean this, and I hope that people understand what I'm saying. This is not an American president. An American president is somebody who has reverence for the American experiment, who has reverence for the Constitution, who has reverence for the process and for the American people. Donald Trump had made it clear that he wouldn't have accepted the results of the election had he not won. He had made it very clear that he had more reverence for the Russian leader than for the previous American president. This is not a man who respected the Constitution, that respected the American people unless they voted for him. We knew what was coming. Now, the fact that a majority of Americans saw what he did in office, saw the million bodies on the ground from COVID, saw the economic destruction of mismanaging the pandemic, saw the venality of his personal behavior, and put him back in the White House on the promise of destructive tariffs, which he said he was going to do, on the promise of Project 2025 being implemented, which will destroy the American presidency and the checks and balances inherent in the Constitution, and put him back in there knowing what he was? Holy hell! The destruction of the East Wing is a metaphor for what this man, this venal character, is promised to do to the American experiment and is doing to it. I am horrified.
One of the things that I've talked to people about in in recent weeks, and you brought up our friend Nicole Wallace. I think everybody forgets over the 10 years is that you and I have differences on policy and positions and everything, but I can share a very similar view about decency, about right and wrong, about kindness, about humanity. When Donald Trump came down the escalator, we all had the same position on Trump. Didn't matter if you were Republican or Democrat. There were no Republicans, zero, outside of the people that were over at Trump Tower who were for Donald Trump. And so 10 years later, you look at the line that everyone you had ever worked with stood on. And I'm like, wow, you got Nicole Wallace, you got Adam Kitzinger, maybe 10 of us. And then I watch a Barry Weiss as she's taking off at CBS says, well, what we got to do here is we got to get Scott Jennings over here. A guy who has no integrity, no credibility, not because he believes something that I don't believe, but because he lies all the time.
That's right.
Nonstop. And he's going to go over to Edward R. Murrow's network. And so if you're a Republican and you hold the position that Nicole and I had, it's, you talk a lot about that in therapy, I suppose, why everyone you ever knew. But how do you think about the collapse of integrity, that the people who held the line against this are now routinely labeled as crazy, and the people who capitulated to it are flush with opportunity because I guess lying pays? How do you sort that out?
Yeah, because look, it is not just you and Nicole who hold a very understandable and long running conservative position that the Republican Party has held since, like I said, I've told you this before. My father he was not a U.S. citizen, but he was a whole Reaganite. Okay, he was an entire Reaganite, and my mother was a whole Carter Democrat. That's why their marriage didn't work out. They were very opposite, but I have understood what Republicans believe my whole life. And among the people who had the view you have about Donald Trump, among the people who had the view Nicole had about Donald Trump, were Marco Rubio, who I covered for a 14-year journalistic career in Florida. I know he had that view. Ted Cruz, who ran to the end, into the convention to try to stop Donald Trump from being president. He had that view as well. John Thune has that position as well. Tucker Carlson said he hates Donald Trump. What was it? Viscerally, passionately. He has that view. I believe Megyn Kelly has that view. Off the record, all of these Republicans who are, Scott Jennings wrote a whole op-ed, which you can still find in the archives, after January 6th, excoriating Donald Trump for trying to foment a coup against the American. They all have that view. I promise you, the vast majority of Republicans in the United States Senate have that view. I don't know about Mike Johnson, because Mike Johnson is a Christian nationalist, and so I don't know what view he has. He was key to trying to overthrow the election. The majority of Republicans, off the record, you know it and I know it because they probably do it for you more, but they've even done it with me, off the record, despise Donald Trump. They do not believe Donald Trump has an ounce of integrity. They hate and loathe Donald Trump, but they are either cowards or opportunists in this moment. And this happened in Weimar, Germany. This happened in Germany. People have to make a decision. Do you fight the autocrat or do you take the knee? Do you bend the knee to the autocrat? And bending the knee is lucrative. You can get what Scott Jennings is getting, which is corporate pats on the head, pats on the back, opportunity. He wants to run for office. He is a coward or an opportunist or both. He knows that he does not agree with this, but he will say on CNN to camera that he does and that he's for it. He said the other day on CNN that he's against the idea of Donald Trump taking a third term. But I promise you, if Steve Bannon and friends somehow come up with some sort of scheme for Trump to take a third term, Scott Jennings will say to camera that he's for it because that's in his financial interest. These people are doing literally what the German elite did in the 1930s with Adolf Hitler. They're doing the exact same thing out of some combination of fear and cowardice.
Does this surprise you?
I'm sorry, fear and opportunism.
Does this surprise you, the
No.
extent of the capitulation?
No. And the corporate capitulation, not at all. Not at all. These corporations have decided that they don't want to be at war with Brendan Carr, the media companies. They're like, we don't want to fight with Brendan Carr. We will do whatever it is we think that Carr and Trump want so that we can get our mergers and acquisitions to go through. These billionaires are saying, yeah, it's humiliating to sit around the Oval, to sit around in the West Wing of the White House and glaze Donald Trump, and behave like $2 hookers, praising Donald Trump for breathing and being alive. And yeah, we're billionaires. We shouldn't have to belittle ourselves that way. But you know what? Crawling on the floor on our bellies for a few minutes is worth it because we get to do our mergers and acquisitions. These people are amoral. And so, no, it doesn't surprise me at all. People have decided that capitulating to Trump is in their financial interest and they're going to do it. Jeff Bezos is a freaking billionaire. You don't have to bow to Trump, but he's going to do it because he's like, why should I fight with the administration when I can get my way? And, the Ellisons are like, yeah, we're billionaires, but so what? We can kiss Donald Trump's ass in order to get our way. But they're also, I believe, I don't think they're all doing stuff they don't believe in. I think a lot of them actually do believe in what Donald Trump believes in. I think a lot of them low key actually are crypto fascist. A lot of these billionaires actually believe in this shit. And so they're getting what they want anyway. The diversity stuff they did in the past was bullshit. They did it because they felt they had to, because George Floyd was murdered. So they did it reluctantly and now they can undo it.
Um, do
Just
you
my opinion.
do you think that I have I truly, maybe I'm nuts. I have no doubt whatsoever what side in this titanic struggle will win. And it is our side. And I am like I said, a small C conservative. I was never, I am a moderate Republican who grew up Catholic from New Jersey. I'm not an evangelical, snake handling Christian hypocrite from Mississippi, right? I am a common sense, middle of the road person. Um, John McCain's great hero, and one of my great heroes in America's story is Teddy Roosevelt. And Teddy Roosevelt was a trust buster. Teddy Roosevelt looked at wilderness areas and said, we have to preserve this. Teddy Roosevelt looked at the accrual of power and said, we have to break this. I don't know, to me, right, any Democrat who's running for president in 2028, promise number one to me, right, we have to put together a big coalition. I want the East Wing restored.
Mhm.
And I know I'm not alone. And I think that that's an easy thing to be for, right? Everyone can be behind that in a broad coalition. From the left flank to the right flank, I want that restored. Second thing you say, what can we all agree on? Right? What the next president can do in the first 20 minutes, like at a baseball game, the home team can say, yay. And that's firing Cash Patel, right? Before you even get to the inaugural speech, slip the new president a piece of paper. To me, economic policy is fundamentally, next Democrat has to be these giant corporations made their move. And every person who ever said, beware and be afraid of the accrual of power, they were right.
Mhm.
And we have to smash these corporations across certainly technology, certainly across agriculture, uh, the seed companies, so on, so forth. We have to break up these concentrations of power. We have to protect the civil liberties of Americans from facial recognition technologies.
Yes.
Who are the people in the Democratic Party that you look out at any level and are tough enough, hard enough, serious enough, and have the political skill to be able to assemble that coalition? Is there
I,
anyone out there early you like?
I'm going to say this, and this is, I'm glad you mentioned Teddy Roosevelt. I'm really glad you did that because you have to recall, in order to become the trust busting um, leader that he emerged as, he had to leave the Republican Party and form the Bull Moose Party. He could not accomplish what he wanted to accomplish within the structure of a Republican Party that had, to me, abandoned its founding ethos, which was founded as the Abolition Party against a venal pro-slavery Democratic Party, which there was a Democrat Republican Party for a while. Then there was a Democratic Party, which was the party of the Southern planters. But the Republican Party, after the Civil War was won, spent 12 years doing Reconstruction, which could have saved our country had it been allowed to continue to succeed. And I will note that it succeeded the best in Mississippi and Louisiana, which were the states that had the most successful Reconstruction. In South Carolina, it created the public school system that not only allowed Black children for the first time to get an education, but also rural poor white kids who also did not go to public school for the most part. The children of white farmers also didn't go to public school until South Carolina Reconstruction created it. Okay, so the reality is, Bull Moose, that Bull Moose was the rejection and reaction to the Republican Party's decision to embrace the Northern industrialists who profited from the Civil War victory and took those profits and turned it to railroads, mines, steel companies, etc., and decided their primary ethos was now economic and no longer about justice and about restoring one country. That I have to make that criticism of the Republican Party because it had a founding ethos that was just and that was virtuous, but it abandoned it in 1877 for the desire to have the White House for Rutherford B. Hayes. And you have to really make that point. That was the pivot when the Republican Party went wrong. FDR, the other Roosevelt, took advantage of the Republican Party walking away from that, and he took on the populism that the Democratic Party had always stood for, but started to separate it from the Klan. Okay? That is when you started to see Black folks move from being Black and tan Republicans out of economic necessity and moving into the Democratic Party, and you started seeing the white Southern Dixiecrats do the white flight thing and go into the formerly hated Republican Party. Because remember, white Southerners hated the Republican Party because it was associated with abolition. But by the turn of the 20th century, the Republican Party was not associated anymore with abolition. It was associated with industrialist Northerners. It was associated with money. And it became a money party all the way through the Great Depression, Hoover, et cetera. Okay, so that is my little history lesson on the Republican Party. That to me, you, Steve, are a bull moose person to me, not so much what I understood growing up to be what Republicans are. The Bull Moose Republican Party, that mini party is its own thing, as I think the FDR Democratic Party is its own thing. That kind of really leaning into having the government regulate wealth, which FDR did against his own class, is its own kind of version of the Democratic Party that they've abandoned. So you and I are like refugees from two parties that abandoned their brands. It's why I'm barely a Democrat. I'm on my way out of this party because I think they've abandoned the FDR brand. I'm now a Bull Moose Democrat, okay? So you and I are on our own. So when you ask me what Democrats had the ability to do what FDR did, which was to smash, he and the two Roosevelts, I think, are heroic in that 20th century early era. Both of these Roosevelts, these cousins, they said, there's something wrong here that the American people aren't being served. And each of them in their own way, Teddy Roosevelt saying, we've got to save this planet. We've got to save our antiquities. We've got to save our green spaces. We've got to save, and FDR saying, we can't allow unlimited wealth and capital to run us. Those two. Where are those people? I don't know how many of them exist in the current Democratic Party. I see them in the progressives for sure. I see them in the AOCs that have boldness. I see it in Elizabeth Warren, who to me is the strongest voice. And she's a former Republican, you know, but she has this strong, loud voice that says, wait a minute, unlimited capital, unlimited surveillance state. This has to stop. I see it in Bernie Sanders. He's not a Democrat. And so my challenge is the leadership of the Democratic Party. I don't think they have the will, the wherewithal, or the political skill to do this. And that really scares me because there isn't anything else other than the Democratic Party.
Um, when you kind of sit there on a day-to-day basis and you appreciate the days are long, the years are short. I just saw one of our commenters said Elizabeth Warren and AOC in 2028.
Or
And
Jasmine Crockett. I'll give her credit too.
and
She at least speaks it.
but that's not a winning ticket.
That's right. And it can't be
Uh,
a woman. And then here's the other thing. I understand America. I'm a realist now. I have seen two women go down in flames. You and I have both watched Kamala Harris, who did everything but, hug Liz Cheney on her way into the polling booth. I think the Democratic Party needs a male voice, because this country also has the jitters about women's liberation that has not been worked out. We haven't worked out our issues with race, but we also haven't worked out the discomfort that a lot of men in this country have with the liberation of white women, because black women were already working, but white women left. They left that house after World War II, and they never went back. They said, no, we like getting our own money. We like having the ability to have birth control pills and access to reproductive choice. And we like having jobs, and we like having the ability to make our own money, not be on an allowance and be 1950s housewives. They didn't never go back. And there's a lot of discomfort with women's liberation. And so I'm not sure a woman can be elected president of the United States in my lifetime. So Democrats need to find a man who can do what AOC and Elizabeth Warren does. Show me that guy. Let's see if we can find. Now, a lot of people are saying Gavin. Gavin Newsom is somebody that a lot of people are wrapping their arms around. I actually loved Gavin Newsom's ability to troll. I think it's great. To me, also, and I've said this before, but he looked just like Count Chocula, which is entertaining for me. So I kind of love that he's Count Chocula. So I right now, yeah, okay, I'll take Count Chocula. That's fine. But I think it has to be somebody who can do more than just talk trash at Trump and match his trolling. They have to embrace this broader idea, to your point, that we cannot allow unlimited wealth to surveil us, to order us in terms of our speech, to limit our speech. Right now, this small group of oligarchs, this small group of techno plutocrats, these Yarvinists, they're not even libertarian. I don't even know. They're Yarvinists. They run our country right now through Donald Trump. This is not Donald Trump's ideology. He doesn't have an ideology. They're just letting him enrich himself and play in traffic while they run our country. Elon and all these white South Africans running our country. This has to stop. And I don't know who can stop them, but I do think it has to be a man.
I saw a lot of people are saying Pete Buttigieg on this, and I like Pete Buttigieg, and but there was a poll, there was a real poll out. Pete Buttigieg had 0% with black voters,
Yeah,
0.
zero.
So it's over.
Right. I mean, the thing is,
I
the
mean, I
person
mean,
has to be broadly popular. The reason Bill Clinton succeeded is the black folks were with him. You do have to have a multiracial coalition. I like Pete Buttigieg too, but he's like a McKinsey sort of. He comes from that McKinsey kind of world, and so he's really good at communicating with conservatives and communicating across the Fox News barrier. But when it comes to communicating with the people that you need to reach, and I'm not talking about the people who watch MSNBC. They're already going to vote. You got to figure out, how do you talk to people who don't watch the news? Can he do that? Maybe, but he's going to have to figure out a way to get outside of his demographic group and speak to people of color. And I haven't seen that he can do that as yet.
I think if you start off right with someone who's as famous as him, who had the run he did, and you have 0 black support. It's like being a professional athlete, right? Like if you can't catch the ball, right, in a clutch situation, you're not going to make it. So I don't know what the answer to that is for
No,
him. I mean, other than you would hope somebody would have a conversation. Says it would be really tough to do without any black votes,
correct.
right, in the Democratic Party. I want to talk about Sector Chief Bovino from Chicago. Full on Himmler haircut. He's got the SS haircut. Full on. And there's a picture of this guy in a long coat, backlit against some wall in Chicago. Have you seen this picture?
I have not, but I am imagining it in my mind, and it probably is exactly what what I'm
I'm
thinking.
I'm going to send you this picture
Okay.
after we're done. I still can't. I'm not confident to say um that it's a real picture. That this guy basically put on an SS overcoat, right, and with his Himmler haircut, right, photographed himself like that now. And so, but the federal judge in Chicago has ordered Sector Chief Bovino, who's leading the attack on the city, to present himself in her courtroom. And we have our Liberty vans out filming all of this in Chicago for the Save America movement. We picked up some great video of Bovino. He's got no helmet on. He's being filmed. They're making a TV show.
Mhm.
Federal judge says, "Well, where's your body camera?" And he goes, "Well, I don't wear one." She said, "Well, you do now." And in fact, report into my courthouse every day at 6 p.m. at the end of the day, right, to do it. How do you process the Nazis amongst us, the little Eichmanns? I I know my Nazi history. And I know the difference between a Nazi and a fascist. I've talked about this for 10 years. Stephen Miller gave a speech where multiple times he quoted Goebbels at the Charlie Kirk funeral, Unleash the Storm, all of this. Do you think that this is like a cancer that exists in the human heart? That if the conditions present themselves, there's just a certain percentage of the population that's inclined to go along with it, like human wise, right? That will bring their boot down on your head for power. I mean, I don't have that in me, right? I would defend your right to disagree with me to my dying breath, right? But what how do you process it, a Bovino, a Miller, all of the little Eichmanns, philosophically, spiritually, in this moment? You look at um Barack Obama's ascension to the presidency from that election night through today. How do you process that? What
I mean,
what 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 is it that we're seeing?
they've always been among us. I mean, the reality is, I think if you went back and polled during slavery, a third of Americans were hardcore for slavery forever. A third of Americans were hardcore for the Confederacy. If you go back to the 1930s, unfortunately, most Americans did not want any involvement in World War II. They had no problem with Hitler. In fact, there was a plot at one point to replace FDR, to overthrow him, that was backed by some very major business interests, overthrow him and give America a Fuhrer. There was a 1927 rally inside Madison Square Garden of actual Klansmen. The Klan actually was a broad organization that I grew up in Colorado. At one point, both the governor of Colorado and the mayor of Denver were members of the Ku Klux Klan. One was a Democrat, one was a Republican. I just think these people will always be with us. There's always going to be a venality that sets in among a good third of any people, right? I mean, you go to the Hutu and the Tutsi in Rwanda, it wasn't hard to get them to massacre each other, and they're literally the same people, right? So I think there's something about the human condition that causes people to harbor hate, and that hate, when it is groupified, can be weaponized into Nazism, fascism, you name it. And so I think there are a third, if you do any poll, Public Religion Research Institute, my favorite pollsters, Robert Jones and company, every time they do a poll, of the American people, do you believe violence is necessary to restore the country to the way it is? A third of people say yes. Do you believe Donald Trump should be allowed not king-like powers? A third say yes. You go on and on. Any question that reveals racism, a third are with that, and they're just with us. And it's, I think, fear. I think it's a sense of, even though they try to portray the opposite, I think it's a sense of inadequacy. I think it's people who don't feel and who or know they can't function in the modern world, and who need to suppress others in order to succeed on their own. I think it's often mediocre type people who are in their own mediocrity, rather than try to delve deep into self-improvement, have decided to just blame other people for their condition. It's people who present themselves as the master race because they actually feel inferior to other races of people. They feel that they cannot compete with them for love interests. And so they hate black. The hanging of black men was all about a terror that black men would be attractive to white women. And so, if a black man even, looked at a black woman, they would hang them with a complete legal immunity. I just think there's always been that group of people. If you look at Stephen Miller's history, he was an unpopular, weird high school kid who couldn't make it in a school where there were lots of Latinas who probably wouldn't touch him with a 10-foot pole. And now he has the power to punish brown people because he hated them in high school. If you look at Donald Trump, he's somebody who, even with $314 million at birth, could not get to be a billionaire until a bunch of crypto criminals and overseas crypto investors gave him $1 billion in crypto money. Now he's a billionaire. He could never be a billionaire at the thing he was supposedly best at, which is real estate. Couldn't get there. But he is one who says that immigrants are poisoning the blood of our country. That is directly out of Mein Kampf. You look at somebody like Russ Vogt, who is a self-proclaimed Christian nationalist. Russ Vogt probably believes that he should be Treasury Secretary, never got there, but now he gets to control America's budget. I think these are, in many cases, inadequate people who use hate as a shield for their inadequacy, and for their own sense of failure and their knowledge that they are failures. And so they fail up into power where they can persecute successful people. If you look at the people being driven out of the government, they are the top generals who this inadequate fool, who is our defense secretary, who could have never become defense secretary. He's just not good enough. He's not smart enough. He's not wise enough. He's not proficient enough. But he's getting to fire 4-star generals simply because they're black or because they're women. He's been able to, rename, put Confederate names back on our bases, put the names of our enemy back on our bases, because they were failures. They fucking lost a war, and yet they get to be portrayed as heroes because racist people think that they're great. So this is, to me, it is the triumph of failures and mediocrities, and who always hate the intellectual elite because they are not themselves elite. Every time I listen to Elon Musk or Peter Thiel speak, I go, Are these your kings? These are your geniuses? They can't even speak. They can't even do one full sentence in coherent English. These are the people we're supposed to fall on our knees and worship. You fucking kidding me? These are weirdos who, in the Jeff, what is it, Mark Zuckerberg? He now
Weirdos.
wants to be like a fit God. Dude, you're a weirdo. Like, you made Facebook to try to meet girls at Harvard. We all know what Facebook was. It was all of the weirdo boys who wanted to be like, here's the hot girls. That's what Facebook was. He was a fucking weirdo. So
Do
I
you,
at one
do
level
you,
I sort of pity them, but at the other end, they're persecuting us.
all right. I want to ask, I got you for half an hour, but I want to ask you one last question on that point. Taking all the politics out of it, all the debate about woke this, that, put all of that to a side. Because I don't know if my inability to call a weirdo is linked, right, to woke excess. But I do believe, right, it's necessary for a vast majority of us. And I don't care, right? Black, white, male, female. People can have a lot of differences, but have the common ability to be like, that's a weirdo.
Yeah.
And we have a government of weirdos and losers, and yet somehow all of those words that are necessary, no one uses them anymore.
Mm.
Like 30 years ago, right? The inherent weirdness of these people.
Yeah.
Right. That's what we would have talked about.
Yeah.
But that's all been like eradicated. And you're right. So you could say these Democrats, you know, middle of the country have a hard time connecting. And I think that's obvious, but whatever, the worst that Chuck Schumer, someone who can't connect, right? Chuck Schumer looks like Bill Clinton next to a Peter Thiel or a Jesse Waters or any of these people. And so how do you explain the affinity for the weirdness from the bread and butter American who's attracted to all these fringe? I can't even really, I can't wrap my head around it.
Yeah.
Like, which is, oh, there's some farmer in Iowa who's like a Peter Thiel fanboy. Like,
I know. You know what it is? I don't think the farmer in Iowa knows who Peter Thiel is or understands that Peter Thiel's company is surveilling him, and that Jeff Bezos is probably going to buy his land and buy up his farm and add it to his giant collection of land. And I don't think these farmers know, even if they know who Elon Musk is, it's only because their kids tell them who it is and they know he owns Tesla. Like, I don't think people dig that deep into it. But what I see as the problem with the structure of American government is that it boils down to freaks and geeks, right? The geeks are the Democrats. they are they are politics geeks, and they're geeky on policy, and so they're not relatable because they are into the tinkering of government and the tinkering of the way government works. They are the kids who ran for student council in high school. Okay? So they're not relatable to that farmer in Iowa because they're the geeks. The Republicans are the freaks. These are the people who they are audaciously and ostentatiously weird, but for the average goof out there in the world, they're entertaining. And also their freakery is aimed at marginalizing, brutalizing, and harming the people who that farmer out somewhere in Iowa loathes from a distance. Gay people, trans people, liberated women who won't obey, Black people who they presume are all a bunch of welfare queens in some dirty, burning down inner city that they'll never visit. They believe that Chicago is a hellhole that's literally on fire because they've never been there and they're never going to go there. These are people that don't have a passport who believe that people who do have a passport worship the globalism of the Jews, and we've got to take down the globalist Jews who they'll never meet. These are people who are fantasizing about a liberal world that isn't real. They think that Portland is on fire right now. And then when they actually see a bunch of grown men in frog suits dancing around, they don't understand that those grown men in frog suits are mocking the freaks who are running the country. We are being run by these men who, in the end, you were very successful in politics, Steve, because you crafted campaigns to win elections. You were a success in that field. Your job was persuasion. I worked on the other side. The people who I was trying to help, the Democrats weren't as good at persuasion, so we weren't as successful. But I'm successful in media. That's the thing I was good at. The people who are calling themselves conservatives, the reason I don't relate them to you at all, they have been unable to persuade a majority of Americans that they want to live in Christian nationalism. They have been unable to use persuasion to convince Americans that they want to live in a surveillance state. They've been unable to persuade a majority of Americans. If you read the PRRI poll, which still says a majority of Americans believe that immigration improves us rather than harms us, they cannot persuade a majority of Americans that immigration is bad, that Black people are all bad. Because they're watching on TV, they're like, I like Michael Jordan, I like LeBron James. I don't know if all Black people are bad. They can't persuade all Americans to hate Black people, hate brown people, hate gay people. So what they do is they take power and they use force to impose their freaky, crazy ass, freak ass view of the world on us. They are imposing it because they can't persuade us to do it. If they could use an election or normal democracy to persuade us, I'd have to cry uncle and say, all right, you got this. You have persuaded a majority of people that they want this. They're not trying to persuade. They're cheating, sneaking, freaking, and forcing their way on us. Even the majority of MAGA people didn't want this shit. They didn't want tariffs. They didn't want to pay triple for groceries, triple for coffee. They didn't ask for that. But they're like, well, screw y'all. You let us in and we're going to force it on you. And that's the only thing they have is force. They are freaks using force.
I'll just a great explanation. There's a great Franklin Roosevelt speech from 1936 where explaining what happened, he says, 12 years the ticker, and then 3 years the breadline. And he goes on and he talks about never before in the history of the country has every powerful interest lined up against one person, me, and I welcome their hatred. And I think that is the test, right, for the Democratic candidates who will run, which is who can deliver as close to the spirit of that line, and people say, yep, they really hate that person, right? They're all in to stop it, and that person's on my side. And that's going to have to be a tough, brilliant political leader. Democratic Party has them.
Yeah.
And the last thing I'll say is, people watching, I'm a Blue Jays fan. I'm in Los Angeles. I've been telling people the Blue Jays are going to win the World Series since June. John Schneider, University of Delaware, catcher, coached 15 years in the minor leagues, and he's there. I'm in this hotel in LA, and we're talking about the 22-year-old Trey Savage, who I've gotten to see pitch in all of these games. Trey Savage, right, could not go out with his teammates after they won the AL Eastern Division title because he had homework due the next day. He's taking 12 college credits, right, while he's making history in the World Series. And so no one has heard or saw Trey Savage pitch. He was a guy who was in single A ball at the beginning of the year, and he's come up to every minor league team, and he shattered records in the World Series last night. That's how I think about the Democratic Party. It is not the people that have run before. It's not the people that, right, have been part of for the last 10 years, kind of the celebrity Democrats. I think that there are people, and I do think there are some women, the younger and not famous ones, that will be on the debate stage that have the capability to speak and have somebody be like them in the way that like Bill Clinton did, right? In a different generation. But, what the country needs now is not kind of refresh Clintonism. It's refresh New Dealism. And so I just think that I urge everybody who's on this, don't be a fanboy or girl, right? We're not voting for American Idol. We need a nominee who can take these people out, and be open to who that person can be. It can be somebody who may not be self-evident at this point.
And I'm going to name one more person. I don't believe I left this person out. And not everybody in this thread may agree with me, but I would say what you just described is Zoran Mamdani. Because what he has done, and Democrats are terrified of him, but but what he's done, I think, is so simple. He has said to people what you know in your heart and soul in the city of New York, in New York City. We can't afford to live. We can't afford our rent. We can't afford groceries. The buses are even too expensive for us. We can't afford it. If you can, and he's like, I only think about that. You can ask me anything else you want. He comes right back to that. People can't afford to continue to live like this, where effectively our current our current leaders is in scare quotes, are saying the rich get unlimited tax cuts. You can't have SNAP.
Yeah.
Venezuela
Really.
gets 40 billion. You can't have your healthcare premiums subsidized. We can subsidize Elon Musk's business, but we can't subsidize your healthcare. We can subsidize, Jeff Bezos's companies and give him contracts, fat contracts. We can't help you. You don't get anything. The American people are waking up, whatever their ideology is, whether they're left, right, Democratic, socialist, conservative, MAGA. I think a lot of people are waking up and saying, wait a minute, we're getting robbed. You're taking our tax money and you're giving it to the very, very wealthy. And then they're using that to surveil us, suppress us, bully us, take away our free speech, brutalize us, kidnap our neighbors, and deport them. You're taking our money and giving it to Argentina and not us. You're letting our farms fail, but you're taking tariffs from us. We're paying for that too. Why are we doing that? And so I think Mamdani, to me, is a model that Democrats shouldn't fear. They should replicate it. You got to speak to what people actually give a shit about. And that is we personally are being robbed of our money and we're not getting back anything for it. Where's the transaction? Why can't we afford healthcare? Why can't we afford rent? Why can't our kids afford to buy a house? Why can't we afford to live? We don't even want to live like Bezos. We don't want to ride around in a yacht. We just want to be able to go on a vacation. We just want to be able to let our kids go to summer camp and be able to afford it. I just want my kids to live as well as I did during the Clinton era. My husband and I, when we were dating, we lived so well in the 90s. That's all we want. I just want my kid to be able to buy a house like I was able to in my 30s. My kids have no shot at buying a house right now,
Yeah.
even though I'm their mom. If I don't give them the down payment money, my kids couldn't have gotten apartments.
Yeah.
I'm like, why can't we just want to be able to afford our lives. We don't want to necessarily have a fucking golden toilet like Trump. We don't need a golden ballroom. Why are we paying for a golden ballroom? Why does he get a golden
We're
ballroom when we
we're
can't afford our rent?
bulldozing whatever he builds there
Take it down.
without much announcement,
Yeah.
right? This is my issue, right? Like I am bulldoze it. We will talk more about the day one strategy. I was supposed to have you for half an hour. I got lucky today. We great to see you, Joy.
Always.
Um, and we'll keep it going. Love having you on and getting to spend some time with you. The
Thank
best.
you, my friend.
You got
Anytime.
it.
And look, I'll always go overtime with you, Steve, because I love our conversations and I appreciate them. And it gives me hope. Talking to you gives me hope. So thank you.
Take care. Bye, Jay.
Thank you. Bye-bye.